The agriculture sector in Rwanda accounts for the third of Rwanda's GDP, and it engages a little above 70% of the country's population. However, there are some challenges, especially having it practiced more on a subsistence level. Giving there a few of the things that we want to be changed in the sector, still remaining the same, and that's not letting it grow as it's supposed to grow, to ensure that it leads or it boosts the country's economic development as it should. Joining me to discuss more about agriculture and how we can add value in order to boost the export base of the country is the CEO of NAEB, National Agriculture Export Board, Ambassador George William Kayonga. It's a pleasure to have you on the BQ.
Thank you for having me, Immy.
And let's start with the fact that NAEB is in charge of seeking international market for Rwanda's agriculture product. How far with realizing this goal?
I think we're doing pretty well, but there's a lot more that we can do. The potential is great for Rwanda to be able to reach the global market with new products. Over the years, we've focused mainly on the traditional crops, but there are more opportunities in the non-traditional sector, and we see that growing at a faster rate than the traditional sector.
Most of the recommendations that have come up indicate that Rwanda is still practicing a lot of subsistence farming. Why do you think it's not being able to move from subsistence to more commercial?
Mainly it's the private sector. It's subsistence farming because traditionally over 80, today maybe it is reduced to about 70%, but most of us grew up in the traditional setting where whether you're looking after cows or tilling the land. So that is what traditionally everybody used to do. And it was done mainly to feed the family. Over the years with government engagement, it is shifting slowly to commercial, but still based on smallholder farms, not the, what would be the large farms that you're talking about. It's only when the private sector can be able to take on this role of investing heavily in agriculture that we can be able to see commercial farming. It is started in some parts of the country where you see the big tea plantations, some coffee plantations, large-scale maize farming in east of Rwanda, in Ndego, where you have over 300 hectares under pivot. When you go down to Kajitumba, over 400 hectares under pivot. So it's taking shape, but not at the pace that we would want as a country.
Agriculture modernization is one of the goals set in Vision 2020 or even EDPRS2 that will be ending in 2018. Do you think it's something that the country will realize, looking at the pace that you've talked about, that the private sector is hopping onto agriculture?
It's part of the Rwandan story where everything seems insurmountable. But one thing for sure, our leadership is focused on it. It will keep driving it. The right policies are in place, the right infrastructure is in place, the enabling environment is in place. It's only when the private sector takes advantage of this that we'll really realize this dream. And it's happening. The return on investment in agriculture today is becoming more and more attractive to the private sector. The biggest hindrance in the past was the risky nature of the sector because it's to a large extent dependent on the climate. So when the losses that are led by climate change, the private sector tends to shy away from investing in agriculture. The financial institutions do not have the right products that can be able to meet financing agriculture. But with innovations in place today, you can still be able to mitigate against climate change and still make money.
Are there mechanisms in place to help the farmers or even the private sector to know how best they can cope with such existing challenges, like you mentioned, climate change?
Yes, of course. First and foremost is having water available. We're blessed with a lot of water as a country, and being able to harness it, make it available, be able to store it, and irrigate the land through pivot irrigation, overhead irrigation, drip irrigation. These technologies are existent. So what the government is doing is, to a large extent, subsidizing that investment. It's quite heavy, we understand that, but it's subsidizing that investment for even the small holder farmers. So if you go out there in the rural areas, you'll find a farmer, a modest farmer with a small water pump and with drip or overhead irrigation being able to, even during this dry season, to be able to plant and harvest their product.
Okay, coffee is said to be one of Rwanda's most important cash crop. If I look at the statistics, it represents 24% of the country's total export, but its domestic consumption is limited. And at NAEB, you say it is Rwanda's second sunrise, something like that?
Yes, indeed.
Good. Why do you think that's the case? Domestic consumption seems to be very limited.
It's historical. Coffee has been with us for over 100 years. But it was grown traditionally for export. It was a foreign crop brought in to be grown and exported out of Rwanda. And over the years, there was no deliberate effort to learn how to enjoy this coffee as Rwandans. But it's now a strategic choice that we increase local consumption of coffee. We were here a month ago showing how to prepare a good cup of coffee. The young generation is demanding for this coffee, and when you see even the tourist numbers that grow, they come here expectant to find a good cup of coffee, because the perception out there that one of the best coffees in the world is produced in Rwanda is that when the tourist comes to Rwanda, they should be able to enjoy a good cup of coffee in the land that produces this coffee. So we've been training baristas for hotels, for restaurants, so that they can have the right equipment to produce a good cup of coffee. It's not knowledge that comes anyhow. You have to be trained to do that. But we've also gone out into the countryside to engage with farmers. So that
talking about farmers, actually, now that you have raised it, most of them have complained that they plant the coffee, okay, and then they sell it to the wholesalers, who are also going to sell it probably to the foreign market, or even to a market where they're going to add some little value. And then when it comes back to them, the price is a little high, and they're like, hey guys, we sold it to you at an affordable price, and you're bringing it back to us at a high price. Do you think the element of the costing could also be a hindrance to them consuming it domestically?
Well, not really. Some of them have understood the dynamics of the value chain. When you look at a cooperative like Dukunde Kawa, the members are primary producers of coffee. Yep. They've invested in processing of coffee. They have invested in a dry mill, and they have now invested in roasting coffee. So they've invested along the whole value chain, and they can be able to enjoy the benefits of value addition in the coffee value chain. It makes sense that it will, at every stage of production, there's an extra cost. Sure. So by the time you enjoy a cup of coffee, the price will be different from the price of selling a kilo of green beans. So to a large extent, yes, but we're teaching them also simple methods that they can be able to use at the home level, where they can be able to dry their coffee in small loads, and they can be able to roast their coffee, grind the coffee at home, and make a simple cup of coffee. And the amazing thing about it is that then the farmer actually appreciates tending to their coffee trees, because then they can know that ultimately whatever they do at the farm level will determine what ends up in a cup.
Very good. Ambassador, we'll get back to the coffee improvement approaches, but the BQ is set up by the audience. The audience sets their questions and they raise them to leaders like you. And we have a question from Sengimana Janvier that says, what strategies has the board put in place to expand Rwanda's export base to boost volumes and foreign exchange receipts? Don't answer that right now. I can give you a time to think about that. We'll now take a very short break. We'll be right back with the Big Q. Please stay here with us. Do not forget, go to our Twitter pages at RTV English and mine at Immy Mulekatetete, and you can drop a comment, a suggestion, or you can tell us who we can host on the Big Q next. Or you can even raise a question to the ambassador. We'll be right back. Stay here with us. Welcome back. It's still the Big Q, still with me, Immy, and still with the Ambassador George William Kayonga, and still talking about agriculture and how Rwanda can increase her export base. And we had closed off with a question from Sengimana Janvier, and he had posted a question to Ambassador, what strategies the board has put in place to expand Rwanda's export base to boost volumes and foreign exchange receipts, please.
Thank you. Like I had mentioned earlier, moving away from the traditional crops, tea and coffee. Some time back, we started producing pyrethrum. The extract is called pyrethrin. Today, we're the second largest producer in the world after Australia. Not big volumes, but at least being out there, known out there that we produce pyrethrin is very important. It's an organic pesticide. Mainly exported to the US market and the European market. Other commodities that we're looking at are horticulture. Horticulture for both the regional market and the international market. Today we export French beans, snow peas to France, to the Netherlands, to the United Kingdom. We're sending chili, the habanero chilies. So we're seeing a lot of diversification and a lot of risk-taking by some of our private sector companies who understand the dynamics today that anything to do with food, there will always be demand for it. As you perfect production, as you perfect the logistics, you'll have a presence in these international markets, and you'll be able to make money. Fortunately, we have an everything but arms access to the European market. And that puts us in a position to be able to export almost everything to the EU market. Okay. Other areas that we are diversifying into is when you look at the investment government has put in place in the crop intensification program, the Jiringa program. Today we find that the traditional sector provides about 52% of our total agricultural export earnings. The non-traditional sector moved from about 10%, 15% 5 years ago to about 48%. It's been growing, it's grown over the last 5 years by over 150%. And this is mainly within the regional market. You're talking about grains, you're talking about beef, you're talking about hides and skins, you're talking about the dairy sector. These are value chains that we're keenly working with the different stakeholders to see how we can structure them properly to ensure that they can continuously grow and that we can be able to meet the demand within the regional market.
Without necessarily disregarding the relentless efforts in growing, okay, or boosting the export volumes, there is still an import-export gap. What's being done to bridge that, to ensure that, looking at Made in Rwanda, a campaign that has been hopped on by so many people, what are some of the other strategies? We need to increase our exports compared to the imports that come into the country.
When you look at strictly the agricultural sector, the key imports are rice, sugar, cooking oil. We will have to make a rational choice as government to understand that maybe we'll not be competitive in all the value chains, and we will keep buying some. Given the difference in terms of what we can produce locally and what is demanded locally, we will also have to understand that we have a growing population. When the GDP rises and per capita GDP rises of a country, the ability to consume and spend also increases. And with a population that has a variety of choice, we then have the task of reducing that gap, but also being able to choose where we're competitive. We see the agricultural exports growing tremendously at about 20% per annum. We are working to look at where we're competitive so that we can be able to export more. We are investing in infrastructure to be able to increase the yields of what we're growing, maybe mostly rice, so that we can be able to reduce the difference between what we're producing locally and what we're importing. And there's a project in line on sugar as well. So what lies ahead, I think, is very promising and very exciting for all those that are involved in the agriculture sector.
And we are optimistic about that.
Very optimistic.
Good. A question from Mutabazi Innocent, and still taking us back to coffee. What projects are in the pipeline with the focus on coffee quality improvement, promotion, and market linkages?
First and foremost, about the year 2000, our head of state, President Paul Kagame, initiated a change in the strategy of our coffee produced in Rwanda, realizing that we can never compete with the likes of Brazil, Vietnam in volumes. We can only compete on quality. So we then moved from exporting coffee anyhow to moving into the specialty coffee market. At that time, we had about 1 or 2 rundown coffee washing stations. Today, we're at about 250 coffee washing stations.
Locally?
Locally. And we're moving to about 50% of our total production within the specialty coffee market. Now, what happens, that gives us a price differential of about $1 over and above ordinary coffee. So, and that also attracts the high or the premium buyers of coffee around the world, because they then see that this is a country that is focusing on quality, that is focusing on sustainable methods of producing coffee, that is interested in the livelihood of the coffee farmers to ensure that they can be able to get a better income out of coffee. So first and foremost was having the strategy in place, and then how we implement it over time. The other challenge has been, of course, the yields of coffee, which are still very low. We're at about 2.6 kilos of cherries per tree, yet the potential can go up to 8 to 10 kilos per tree if the tree is well tended to, provided the right inputs at the right time, and we avoid the pests that attack the coffee tree. So we've come up with a strategy where between the coffee producers and government, we increase the availability of fertilizers, but also not only increase the availability of fertilizers, but ensure that all the fertilizers are applied countrywide. Last year we undertook coffee census to be able to know our farmers, to be able to know where they are, to be able to know how many coffee trees they have, so that we can be able to reach out to them. So this year we're going to be able to supply fertilizer and pesticide to get to each and every farmer, so that we can be able to get higher yields of coffee.
Ambassador, that's very good. But Mutabazi Innocent, I don't know if he's a coffee farmer himself, he seems to highlight something very important here, that the key players of the whole process are forgotten, and that those are the farmers, especially something to do with their livelihood. What is done by the board to ensure that their livelihood is improved?
Okay, when you look at the way the sector has been structured in the past, was that the farmer delivered cherries to the coffee washing station, who then paid for the coffee at the prevailing market rates, and there was no relationship between the farmer and the coffee washing station owner. And after the season, this guy would lock up the place, go back, enjoy the profits of his labor, and come back the next season. We're trying to reverse that. We would want that the owner of the coffee washing station should know the farmers that supply him the cherries, should know the area that is under coffee within his zone, and should work with the farmers before the harvest period to ensure that they can be able to deliver a certain amount of cherries to his coffee washing stations, meaning that there is an obligation of this processor to invest downstream in the farmers. Another thing that we're working on is that given this kind of relationship, as we did in tea last year, we increased through negotiations with the tea processors to increase from 30% to 40% the price that a farmer can get from the tea factory. In the past, they would get 30% of the tea price at the auction, but we negotiated with them to increase that to 40%, meaning that the farmer incomes are going to grow in tea as they invest more in increasing production, getting a better price. We're going to see tremendous improvement in the livelihoods of the tea farmers. Equally, within coffee, it's been a while. We're working with a few stakeholders to understand the formula that we have used in the past, more especially that it's based upon the cost of production of a kilo of cherries. Over the years, that has changed tremendously. So we need to rework the formula to be able to capture the present day realities so that we can be able to increase the price that the farmer can be paid. This will be available within the next coffee season, so the farmers should be expectant that next year they should get better prices, having worked with stakeholders.
Very good. Now, I have another question from Babs Goretti Wine. And this is ICT related. We are in a digital era, and of course this will have to come in. What are some of the deliberations you have pushed for to help understand more how science, technology and innovation can be used to improve the agriculture sector?
First and foremost is having a face to our products. We realize that in today's world, the consumer is very demanding. They would like to know, they would like to trace back what they are drinking to a farmer somewhere. So being able to digitize that whole process to the farmer is going to be very critical. So we're going to collaborate with some two agencies to create a traceability program for coffee. And that way, somebody drinking coffee in Japan can say that I like this cup of coffee, I'm willing to pay an extra $1 or $2, but I would like that money to get back to the farmer. So the census that we undertook gave us the face of the farmer, gave us their ID number, and we're going to build on that platform to be able to build a traceability program. And we're quite confident that maybe 3 years down the road, it will be very transformative in the coffee sector.
And how have the farmers been helped to adopt some of the innovation approaches, where they grow their coffee?
Over the years, for the last 5 years, we've been investing in coming up with a new variety of coffee. It's just been released by the Rwanda Agricultural Board in November last year. They are now working on producing enough seedlings that we can supply to the farmer. We think that this variety is going to be a game changer because it's been developed to be able to withstand climate difficulties or effects, but also to be able to withstand some of the pests that are prevalent within our region. So first and foremost is having a good performing variety, and then engaging with them to be able to adopt some of the new agronomic practices that are required to be able to have a tree producing quite a lot of coffee.
Very good. Now we're winding up with Ninsima Dennis saying that Rwanda is one of the leading countries to join the Sustainable Coffee Challenge, a global collaborative effort that is aimed at making coffee the world's first sustainable agriculture product. How does it help expand the country's coffee market share on the global market?
Today's global market is very, very information rich. Today's consumer is willing to pay extra as long as they feel that they're buying a product that is sustainable. Now, when we talk about sustainability, is that first and foremost, the producer, are they earning an income that will sustain them in the same profession? Will they continuously be coffee farmers? If the price that they get today does not encourage them to stay in the sector, we'll have no coffee sector a few decades from today. So the Sustainable Coffee Challenge is a response to the challenges in the coffee sector, but also as a response to the questions that the consumers are posing today. The Sustainable Coffee Challenge brings together countries. Today it's Rwanda and Mexico that have signed to that. It brings in some of the largest coffee buyers, the likes of Starbucks and the big buyers in the world. It brings together non-government organizations, certifying bodies. It also brings in traders, the likes of Olam and the other big players. So we're saying the farmer should get a good price for the coffee. We're saying the environment should be protected to ensure that we can still have a good environment in which we can grow coffee. We're saying that the trade practices along the whole value chain are fair to everybody. So that's a commitment that we're making. We've decided to be accountable to our consumers, but accountable to our partners as well, but also accountable, first and foremost, to our coffee producers.
Very good. Now, as a person who came into office with a pledge to boost agriculture, and I've heard all about the strategies that probably you have put up as a CEO at NAEB, over the next few years, still in office, okay? Probably you're still in office. Over the next 5 to a few other years, what are some of the strategies that are, or approaches or actions you're going to employ in order to deal with the challenges in the agriculture value chain?
Engaging the private sector. I think if we can be able to engage with the private sector and convince them that investing in modern agriculture is profitable, I'll be very happy at the time I'm exiting. So I'm putting a lot of focus on engaging with the private sector to invest in agriculture.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you too.
Thanks a lot for the questions that you raised here on the BQ, and thanks a lot for watching. I'm Immy Mulekatetete, wishing you a wonderful time and reminding you to go on our Twitter pages at RTV English and mine at Immy Mulekatetete and drop a comment, a suggestion, or anything, or you can even tell us who we can host next on the BQ. Be well and be blessed.